I'm going to go ahead and invite Melt Patterson to our talk show here, our ASL Talk Show. So we'll get everything set up and then we'll be ready to start the show. I'm still waiting for Mel to get set up and join us. We appreciate your patience. Thank you. We're still waiting. Just give us a second for Mel to join the conversation. Still waiting for Melt. Hold on one second. You gotta go to the Congress page. I'm trying to get Melt set up. He was looking at my personal wall and not looking at my Congress page, so hold on. I'll find it here in a second. Okay, just watch it and then it should pop up and you should be able to click it. Let me see, I think I clicked it, I'm not sure. I might have found it. The request should be there for Mel to click on. And voila. We are there. Awesome. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Hello. Hello, Chris. Hello, Melt. This is great. I thought I was good at Facebook, and apparently I'm not as good as I think I am. I'm a little green. That's fine. That's fine, Mel. You're not the only one. It happens to the best of us as well. So, welcome to our ASL Talk Show. This is awesome. I'm happy to join. Thank you for this. I am Chris Hallmark, and I'm running for Congress here in Kansas 3rd District. If you could introduce yourself, Mel. My name is Melvin Patterson. This is my name sign. Live in Northern California, and I'm so happy to join this. Congratulations for jumping in there and getting in the political game. We're proud of you. I am thrilled to be sitting here, right here with you and getting ready to talk in front of a big audience for them to learn about our campaign and our platform and the goals that we have. And I look forward to your questions. I probably have about 5 or 6 questions, obviously in the political realm as well as the deaf community, seeing how we can help support you. That would be awesome. So, from the deaf perspective, how can you help us understand what your future role would be in Congress? So I guess my question then is, I know you're obviously going to be against other candidates there in your 3rd district. If you were to win, how much time would you be able to dedicate to the deaf community? I know that you're obviously representing the district, the 3rd district there, and your constituents in the district, and that's your top priority. I do understand that. But how much time are you going to be able to commit to the deaf community? So, okay, that is a great question. Obviously, if I win the election, I represent 2 different groups of constituents. The actual constituents who live here in the 3rd district who are actually going to vote for me to go into Congress and represent them. That's obviously my priority. But on the national level, I have all of deaf America watching me. And when I go into Congress, they're going to be wanting me to come up and support and promote all of their deaf needs as well. So, of course, their voice is going to be brought into Congress through my office. Now, I would set up a deaf team who could be active and be working and creating policies and bills to advocate for the entire deaf community across the nation while I work with the local constituents in the 3rd district. I want to be able to go back and forth. I want to be able to have communication on hot topics and everything that they want, because obviously I've got to work with them. Awesome. So anytime anything politically related in the White House, say the economy or anything like that, say war, if that were to happen, obviously you come back to your 3rd district and communicate with them and give them a yay or a nay there in DC. On a national level, you'd be there in Congress. Okay, that makes sense. I get that. Okay. Now you have the House of Representatives and you have the Senate, 2 different bodies. We have the House of Representatives, who are every 2 years they're voted in, and you have Senate, which is every 6 years. The number of voters is obviously smaller for the Congress as opposed to the Senate, where they have a little more power, a little more clout. Are you willing to work with anyone? Can you work with the senators on, say, deaf legislation or anything related to deafness? Absolutely. Once I am elected, in the House of Representatives office, I will have media power that will continue to increase, because obviously I would be the first deaf and the first fully disabled from childhood on up to actually be in Congress. The media is going to love this. They're going to want my perspective. They're going to want my specific background. And they're going to give me the ability to work with, that will give me the ability to work with the Senate and Congress as well. Which means, in turn, that anything that the Congress people want, those issues would be emphasized. And they're going to say, hey, Chris, can you talk to the media about this? We really want to push and put more pressure on some of these issues and really focus on it, because I have that leverage at this point, because I can get more support. I can change other congressmen and women who might be resistant to it and get them to support. So they're going to recognize that I'm going to have this ability to do that. The reason I asked is because the CRPD, the Conference on Rights for People with Disabilities, the CRPD, excuse me, was ratified in 162 countries. And the U.S. is non-existent. I mean, it's a very simple, basic protecting people with disabilities, including deaf, blind, what have you, and their rights. So they can vote, so they can work. When you're running in Congress, or you're in Congress, I mean, obviously those rights would be there. 162 other countries have done it, but not the United States. They're one of those left out. So I guess I want to know, Harry Reid, a senator, was shocked that it was even denied. And so this CRPD, he wanted to know what it means and what we could do and how it could really fit into America and into this whole realm here. It's a UN, a United Nations type thing. So after that, John McCain, a Republican from Arizona, a senator for many years, he in turn, trying to remember the guy's name. He's oh shoot, I can't come up with his name right offhand. Oh my goodness. He's a senator. John Kerry. Yes, John Kerry. Thank you, Chris. John Kerry, former senator, just recently, well, didn't resign, but basically his time was up for United States Secretary of State. So those two really worked on it, but people with disabilities looked at it and they were really concerned. They're like, we're humans, okay? You need to look at us as humans, just like every other human being. We're humans. We're not a policy. So they're trying to rewrite the statements in that to say that deaf is not and does not ever, should ever be a political aspect. We're humans. We're human beings. You know, you have, the different, you have the gas, the electric car debate that's going on. You have the Republicans and the Democrats with the rules set up for gas or electric cars. Obviously, you're talking about energy. And yes, that is a hot political issue. It's a political issue. You're talking about safety. But deaf or deafness, trying to change a policy, I'm a human being. We're different than energy. We're different than a car. You can't change us. We have a mind. We have a language. We can read and write. So I'm a political policy that you can change. That's what John Kerry and Senator McCain have been working on. And so deaf people are looking at this and they're wanting to get the human aspect involved in this. And how can you help them understand with the CRPD? Can you bring the CRPD back into it and get it in there for a second time? I'm just wanted you to elaborate on that. First answer, absolutely. I'm a role model, the perfect one to be in Congress and get in with them and go in there and get things to change, get the culture to change as well, because I use a second language. The ADA applies in Congress and any office. The ADA covers me and I can set up and enforce the ADA, and that's what gives them the picture of what a disability can do, because the ADA applies to them. The congressmen and women will recognize this and say Chris Hallmark is able to do his job because of the ADA. A lot of them think that I would be unable because Chris has a disability, but this would verify and prove, and I would be walking proof that I would be able to do this because of the ADA. And I want to push for Americans to be involved in UN and to guide us on how to make sure that all people with disabilities have human rights. And I'm using myself as an example, as a congressman, as a man who would work in the government with a disability, that it is possible. McCain is a hero. I mean, a war hero, war veteran, and a lot of respect for his service to the country for all of us. And that's why when he's wanting to advocate for disabilities, it's a very strong advocation. Yes, people with disabilities love him because he's a role model, but at the same time, his view on other issues varies. and where it shows he's not supporting disabilities, at least not to 100%. John Kerry, yes, he's a war hero. He's been involved and active in a lot of service for our country. Does he understand everything about disabilities? Absolutely not. He can't really discuss and explain clearly some of these issues. Yet at the same time, I would be able to talk with any disability groups. I completely understand their perspective and how to explain it. I understand the heart. We have the same heart, and we're able to communicate that way. I can sit there and I can fight and I can resist and I can educate and educate and educate and keep doing that until they finally understand and come to agreement to work with us, with all these different groups. And that would go through my office. And that's super important for everybody in America, because disabilities can happen to anyone. It could be an accident. It could be somebody who's born with one. Disabilities have affected a lot of people. And this is America. This is supposed to be our best America, our best country in the whole world. And it saddens me and it's shameful that the United States is not involved with the UN to support people with disabilities and give them their human basic rights. They need to respect that. Yeah, and come time to vote for the CRPD. The Senate said, no, we have good laws, we protect people with disabilities, we have the ADA, we have all these other laws and everything in place. And so they were hesitant for this. But, you know, deaf people, blind people, people with disabilities, we're looking at these so-called protections, and they're looking at them and saying, good enough. And I'm looking at it and shaking my head. My response to that is, that's why I'm running for Congress. I feel when I go into Congress that I can clearly explain the ADA and tell them it's not good enough. I want to work with many disability groups, many different coalitions, and have a deaf team to find ways to change the design of the ADA, at the same time advocating and influencing society and America so they can learn so many things about disabilities, every disability, and understand that there's so many, that we don't need to minimize these disabilities. We need to influence how our children here in America grow up and learn and change their perception and their perspective on disabilities. That these people are not incapable of doing anything. A disability is a societal barrier from accomplishing their American dream. That's what we need to change the perception of what the word actually means. That's why when I go into Congress, my statement is going to be very powerful, and it's going to influence and cause a lot of these people to reconsider and change their paradigms, because that's what I want.
Okay.
Disability means it's a barrier, and they're trying to chase the dream. I really like that statement you used. I liked it very much. I need to use that. Do you mind if I use it on my own? Disability means that the system is keeping them from chasing their dreams. And it's true. Maybe that will help remove that barrier. And I also want to add a more, if I could. I don't see myself as having a disability, because I envision that if everyone here in America were to learn my language, American Sign Language, there would be no barriers. There would be no language barrier. So therefore, I'm not disabled. If that were to happen, I could go anywhere. I could communicate. I could give speeches. I could speak. I could, ask them to start signing because I was there in person. The audience would understand. Everybody would understand because we'd have a common language. I would not be disabled at that point because of our common language. If they're not providing interpreters, if they're not giving access to captions or a CART system, real-time captioning and equipment, and they're not giving that, that's a barrier. That's a societal barrier that's preventing and stopping us from doing the things that we can do. It seems to me that if you were to win this, you would you would set up a task force in Congress and be able to set up bills and write policies. And you would be one of the bill supporters or endorsers. So would you have a task force that was deaf and hard of hearing and disabled? Would you be able to put a group like that together to be able to improve the ADA? Yes, the biggest, what I envision is when I win the election, come November, that night when I win, many disability groups are going to be on me and want to be involved and want me to raise awareness. ADA 2.0, I can see that coming down the line. Having a deaf team, I want them to be the champion for working with every single group, not just deaf, but to prove to the whole world that a deaf person can do something, that we can all work together and we can all come together and we can make a bill and we can make amendments. For example, if we have a group of disabled people, say a blind group, and we set up a coalition and they write down the things that they want, that they need from the ADA to support them, the deaf people will understand them and be able to add this to the bill, not be critical, not try to change or adapt what they want, but because we have an understanding that this group, they may not be deaf, but they make decisions on what they need and want. So that's what we want to set up. We have these different disability groups that want to give their input. That I can propose come January. That's when congressmen typically make their first proposals, are in January. I can bring this proposal in, and like you were talking about with the oil and the energy with cars, they're political issues, but many of the congressmen have investments in those oil companies, and they're resistant because they're afraid to lose their profitability. So when they lose this oil or lose that bill, they lose their profit. So I doubt that there's going to be a lot of resistance because we're talking about humans, and congressmen are invested in money, and so they're resistant to groups' needs because of money. So I believe that this would be able to be pushed through. And if I'm still in the office in 2 or 3 years after that, it will go through. Oh, I support you, man. I support you. I am trying my best. I want to get every deaf and hard of hearing person behind you. That's what I want. I won't be surprised when those groups start getting involved in seeing this. They're not going to have any doubts whatsoever. I know. Another question I wanted to ask. Bring it on. Any Congress members that you know of that might be deaf friendly? Or like, do you have any names of people that we might know? I know the only one that I know of, and I forgot the name. He has a brother that's deaf. Ed Markey. His brother is deaf, and he introduced the ADA. No, I think it was Harris. I need to look it up on my laptop. Give me 1 second because I want to get the name right before we move on. Okay, it just came to me. It was Tom Harkins. He's now retired, Tom Harkin. And he introduced in 1990 the ADA into law because he's the one that put it on the floor. So, sorry, I lost my train of thought. So Tom Harkins introduced the ADA onto the floor in sign. He used sign language. Obviously, he's deaf friendly. He has a deaf brother. So he introduced it in sign language with his family. So he's obviously a very strong advocate for us. I envision that when I go into Congress, that I will have more influence because obviously I'm deaf and use sign language. So right now, the other Congress people, it's very hard to see if they're actually allies or deaf friendly, as you want to say. And they might be willing to agree. They may not be 100% in at this point, but I do envision trying to, because of the media attention on me, that I can, get what I want from them and use my power. That's what I envision. And I think anybody can agree with you, and hopefully we can have some deaf-friendly Congress members. My deaf team will have access to all the different offices from my office. So I envision that they will be able to influence and make them realize and learn and expose them to be able to see all these different things. So they'll have a phone call from a video phone and see what it's like. They'll be involved in a meeting with an interpreter and a note taker. They'll be able to see all these things. That's what I envision is something like this, making it across America, because I want deaf staff, because deaf can do it. So now we've talked deaf friendly or allies, not necessarily being an issue. It's partisan. It's nonpartisan, excuse me, but my deaf people keep coming up to me, my friends. I'm Republican, or I'm Green, I'm independent. We have a congressman now, and they want to be able to work with you. So what I see is once you are in the House of Representatives, that this is a chance to be a nonpartisan issue, to be able to work with you. And that will help improve their communication with all deaf people, no matter the party. I want deaf people to realize that, okay, just because you're a Democrat doesn't mean they need to stop the conversation and not support you. This gives more chance to hurt the relationship between them because you're a Democrat or a different party. So say there's another deaf person who might be a Republican, and they come up there and they challenge you, and you're a Democrat and they win or whatever. It's great because it's a deaf person. You have all these hearing people, all these other people, and you're the only deaf person. How can you send a message to, how do I say this, for people not from your party to support you? I do envision being the only deaf person among all these hearing people. It not only helps just deaf people, it helps every minority and diverse person too. I'm running against 4 white, straight males. They have no idea what privilege is. They don't know what oppression looks like. They have no concept of how to resolve issues. All they know how to do is talk and say they support diverse people, and it's just talk. I have it in my heart. I felt the struggle, the oppression. I'm friends with many deaf people, and I share their story. They've told me their story. I've learned so much from them my entire life. At the same time, I see all these diverse people as well that this applies to. Here in the 3rd District, we have basically 2 major counties that have a very strong border. Counties, we have 2 different counties. Okay, gotcha. We actually have 2.5, but I'm going to explain about the 2 where we have the majority of the constituents. We have a very strong line between these 2 counties, a very strong line. We have Johnson County here on the south side. We have Wyandotte County here on the north side. This line right there is not because it's a county line. It's how these constituents are separated. We have a white group and we have a diverse group. Here in Wyandotte County, we have public transportation. for their county. Here in Johnson County, we don't have it. We have a lot of cars for transportation. If you're impoverished or, it's hard to get things. I mean, if you have families that are Spanish speaking or you have impoverished families, it's harder to get housing and things like that. It's not good quality living. It's not in great areas. So that's been built all these years. We have immigrants from other countries who have come to live in Wyandotte County. And now it's the #2 most diverse county in the entire country. Florida has the #1 county, but here in this district, we have the second most diverse. Johnson County is mostly white. Those are the ones who typically vote. 2012, 14, 2016, they voted for white males. And I feel like Wyandotte County is not represented. So me running for Congress, I feel like I will be able to represent this minority constituents here in Wyandotte County. It's the largest benefit that I have. It's a huge benefit, not just for deaf people. So yes, the more that they learn about our campaign, they will see the parallels with how a deaf person struggles with oppression, with issues. For example, persons of color have obviously an issue with police shootings and things like that. And here in Oklahoma, we had this similar situation happen. So I can explain to them that I completely understand their fear of law enforcement. You know, the lack of communication when we work with law enforcement, they are a threat. And I want to resolve this issue in Congress for deaf to be included as well as persons of color. We also have women. And I can represent women because women have always had men controlling everything for them. That's why we need to bring up, and again, women should not and don't ever, they need to be on an equal playing field. Yes, and they have rights. They have rights. Deaf people have suffered by the people who aren't deaf controlling what they need and what jobs they can get and what communication they're going to allow them to have and be able to control all that because they're not deaf and they don't understand. So it's a very big parallel between deaf people and women. So then we have also Native Americans. I'm teaching a new sign here for Native Americans. They've struggled back in time with the white government and the white people trying to take away their culture and their language to prevent the American Indians and the Native Americans to continue their traditions because their perception is that they are a threat and they are a danger. So if we take away their language and their culture, it makes them tame. We're taming them. We're taming their culture so they're not as active. They're not as violent. So you have deaf people who have suffered the exact same thing today by having them take away our language and our culture, not having access to education and be able to socialize with deaf people. That's a parallel with the Native Americans. Another huge diverse group here in the 3rd District are Latina groups. When I meet with some of the Latino groups here, there's a resistance to voting because Americans, typically white males, don't understand their struggle. And I asked them if they still suffer with using a second language and if that's the issue. And they said, absolutely. They're sick of people getting cheaper interpreters, volunteer interpreters, just the lack of communication. And that is so similar to what the struggle that we go to. The struggle I get for even running for Congress, trying to get an interpreter set up, for important meetings, trying to get a qualified interpreter. And I'm like, are you sick of people telling you that you should be speaking English? Or that you should move out of America because you don't speak English? They're like, yes, we are sick of this. Imagine when I'm in Congress and they can't, I don't speak English. And I'm going to say, look, you're telling me I need to speak English? because you're going to get Chris Hallmark out of Congress because he doesn't speak English. So it makes them realize that we're here fighting the same thing. And so that can garner more support as well, as they can see that all these minority and diverse groups have a privilege here, and having me as a deaf person going to Congress, because I understand their oppression. I understand their struggle and everything they've been through. Yes, we've experienced oppression. And I feel that you truly understand these different groups and the different ways that they've experienced as well. And once they see that connection and they say, okay, we're talking about language, we're talking about interpreters, we're talking about all these different concerns and misunderstandings that they've experienced as well, I think that will help them to show that you better represent them. I think that was spot on. I do have another question. This might be the last one. Let me see here. Okay, I've been watching the Senate, House of Representatives on occasion, mostly the Senate when they're on TV. Sometimes they have caption, sometimes it's not great, and I try to watch it. A lot of it I don't get. You know, it's important to understand legislative issues though. But for example, most recently, DACA, D-A-C-A, and the times it's come up before, you know, we've had more interest in it, and I'm trying to watch the captioning. When somebody comes up, I'm like, I don't know who that is. Okay, then I watch the captioning. So in turn, if you're in there, we'll be able to watch a sign language interpreter. We'll be able to see both the Republicans and Democrats and everybody in politics in there with an interpreter in our language. Will that be on a national TV level, or will it be like have an interpreter, have like a website we can see the interpreter that's working in Congress? I envision myself going into Congress, and they have to follow the ADA law. There's no choice in the matter. That's going to change how they all communicate. They're not going to be able to have these side conversations, because I'm going to get up and say, Speaker of the House, I want to call your attention to a person that, I want to call your attention that each person needs to speak one at a time so we can have communication and access communication here in this House. That's what I'm going to say. So these side conversations, these sidebars have to stop. You have to talk one at a time. So I have that control, and the Speaker of the House then has that control, and following the ADA laws, that's what they have to do. So yes, I want interpreters. I want a cart system. I want complete access to every piece of communication happening in the House. C-SPAN typically has a live feed going on, and I'm sure that they would have the privilege or provision to be able to have a little screen of my team so that they can see the interpreters and the speaker at the same time on the screen. And I can go back and forth in my language. They can get both of them in the screen at the same time. If there's still any political happenings or goings on where there's an interpreter, my office would be willing to set up a website specifically for that. So we have a team that can video and be willing to show up to make sure that these are videoed interpreters, and people would have access and exposure to all the communication in politics for the public to see this and be able to set up this to have complete and full access for everything and every action in Congress and what's going on in Washington, D.C. So yeah, I perceive that. Let's make this happen. I'm right there with you. It will. I'm dependent on you, man. I'm dependent on you. I am so proud. I'm so proud to endorse you. My hat's off to you. Because of your persistence. I lost my train of thought. We need you. I hate to speak for other people. I'm trying not to, but I need you. I need you to do this. And it's funny because so many deaf people say, you know, running either for House of Representatives or Senate, they look at me and I'm like, you know, I have no interest in it. It's not me. But if I were a senator or representative, I would feel so limited. And I want to be able to, make an app or be able to do something and work with the Congress members, but I can't be involved with all these other things, so I feel very limited. But you're a passionate person. You want to make changes for the better. And I want to change things for the better, and I'm working on an app right now to just do that. But, oh man, but you, my friend, you have my support. And you know what another person says, I'm a Republican. I'm like, yeah, he's a Democrat, so what are you going to do? You're going to support him because he's deaf. He's deaf. What's the difference? There isn't much difference. What is the difference between Democrat and Republican? He's deaf. Why does it matter? He's deaf. When other people realize that, they're going to change their mind, and they're going to look at your abilities to be able to run, and that you can represent your district, and that you can speak about deaf people and represent deaf people. And not only that, but just on any legislative issue, that you're able to talk about these issues. And I think it'll start to change their perception of you. Just to leave him alone and follow him through and let him earn everything and all the respect that he needs from everyone everywhere. And that needs to change. And for a better, brighter society here in America. So thank you. And I do see the influence on deaf history. I mean, I look running for Congress, and I see it build and build. And right now is the perfect time. If Trump were not president, I don't think that I would have a shot. I don't think I'd be running. I don't think the opportunity to win would be there. Or even with Hillary Clinton as president. This, with Trump as president, has opened the door for many people to run who you would not think would be running. This includes women, people who are transgender, deaf. And I understand there are some deaf that might want to support their own party. And that's fine with me. But my goal is to open this door. To open a door that has been locked for ages, that have prevented and blocked deaf people from going in. I want to push this door open so that future deaf children can envision themselves and dream to go in this door. I don't care what party. I'm an American. I'm a patriot. I'm patriotic, and I love my flag. And I'm proud of America and Americans. And I am thrilled to represent to the world how a deaf person can run for Congress. After everything is said and done, I'm going to continue sharing my experience with any deaf person who wants to run from here on out for the rest of my life, because what I'm doing right now is my best. And if it's not good enough, that's fine. There are others that might have better or more opportunity than me. And I'm proud. I'm proud, and I'm not going to give up. I'm not going to give up. I just hope that the deaf community sees this, gives me support. This is the first deaf person to do this. This is historic. We finally have the first deaf person in Congress. This could happen. That same night, every deaf person, when the election happens in the world, is going to have more respect for a deaf person. This is a shining example of how hearing people can look and say, congratulations, we have a deaf person doing this. That's what I look forward to. And yes, 2 years is hard work. 15 hours a day, I've done this. I've done that kind of job before. It's not that hard work for me. And I look forward to rolling up my sleeves and working hard to give this 3rd district the best representation they have ever had and America has ever seen. Because the deaf community has already experienced all this for the longest time. And they've been ignored. The deaf community has been ignored for all this time. And we care about them. And they care about us too. So thank you for joining us, Mel. Thank you for joining our show. I appreciate the discussion. Hopefully the audience enjoys this discussion as well. And will get involved with our campaign. by making donations to our campaign. This money will be spent on marketing, getting around our district, getting voters aware of our campaign, and we need this. We need to learn that this man can make it possible, and he's able to represent more of the population than the other candidates that I'm competing for in the Democratic nomination. If I win the primary election, this will be the first time a deaf person has won a federal level primary election. So I will be the only one challenging the Republican Yoder. All of America is going to be watching this, because come August 7th, there's going to be news. They're going to be talking about elections. They're going to talk about this deaf man who won a Democratic nomination, and everybody across America is going to be watching it. Facebook pages are going to be lit up, because this guy has made vlogs every day for 365 days talking in our deaf language, speaking in our deaf language, using subtitles in English and Spanish. And so that's why I can influence so much. And I see Kansas as being the heart of America, right here, smack in the middle. And I envision all these donations and everybody getting involved and seeing that the deaf community is willing to support and say, this is Chris Hallmark. He's the man we want to represent our entire nation, and go into Congress and make history and push and take our country back. You know, I'm smiling because I think of deaf children that are going to finally have somebody to look up to and say, this is what I aspire to be. That's what I want to become. I'm like, hey, you want to be governor? You want to be mayor? House of Representatives? Senate? I mean, city council? Because of you, they're able to do it. And that's why I'm pushing everyone to you. And these, in turn, are going to realize, no matter the political party, what you're setting up for them is going to make our life easier and easier and easier. Congratulations, my friend. I applaud you. This was great. Thank you. And all the people here in the 3rd District need to learn that deaf children, I am their insurance. For example, when you look at all the different people running for Congress, they like to talk out of both sides of their mouth quite often. I don't do that. I don't want deaf children to be disappointed in me when I win the election. I want to set this up to say, hey, I can work for you. I can work harder. I can push for improvements for everyone, for every person. So that's why deaf children need us. Our campaign is their insurance. I want to be able to sit and say when I'm retired that I gave deaf children their path to succeed, to be able to accomplish their dreams. All right, I think it's time to close really quick. I was looking at some of the comments. I think one guy wanted to ask what the CRPD was.
Right.
How can we protect people with disabilities, people in wheelchairs, people who are blind, deaf, a myriad of disabilities, saying that they won't be able to protect them. We can't work for them. They can't go to college. They can't do all these different things. They can't work. And we're saying that, you know, deaf people are just like everybody else. So say when you go to like, whether they're deaf or the PATD, is a political and it's a political and the deaf. It's a blue star. You'll see it. Politics and the deaf. Excuse me. Interpreter error. So when you go there, you can look at NAD, National Association for the Deaf. You'll see CRPD information there. You'll see it in sign. So you can see that it's a human rights thing. That sign language and deafness is a human right, human rights issue. But there's more information there in CRPD. Let me look at another question. Chris says, I don't think I see another one. For the audience, just for your information, we can see your comments, but because of the technology we're using our phones, we can't see the entire question. So if you do have questions, try to keep them shorter so we can see them. It's hard for us to see. We might try to go on 5 or 10 minutes more, if that's okay with you, Mel. Yeah, that's fine. That's great. There's a 30-second delay after you watch the vlog to make a comment for us to be able to see them. So if you have any questions about our campaign. Okay, we have a question here about the military. Hold on. Sorry, Melt is speaking. Chris, they want to know, Tom Harkins has 2 videos from 1990 and 2013. So I do remember the one from 2013. Let me see here. Nice. I do see a question here that I'd like to ask about or answer. It says federal level deaf people working in the military with barriers, and what can I do to help them? Yes, I want to see deaf people get in our military. I do. There are many deaf people who have already asked me about this, that they want to get involved. There are several different ways that deaf people can work in the military. For example, video surveillance is one of the different things because their eyes, being able to do drones, to handle drones. There's so many good gamers and people, deaf people. There's just a myriad of different things. Communication isn't really a big issue with the technology we have now. Deaf people would be able to work in the military. The battle lines, I would leave that up to the military for their decision if they think deaf people should be in battle lines. But stepping back from them, when you're talking about Navy ships, you're talking about the Air Force mechanics, you're talking about anything within the military outside of the battle lines, yes, I want to set up a pathway for deaf people to get involved and to be able to serve in our country and serve our country in here because we're all Americans. Yes, yes, there was a story about that from Israel as well. So yeah, it was very eye-opening. Another question here. Right, yes. I do know of a police officer who's deaf in Texas. Sheriff's deputy. Yes, so that is possible. You were going to say? It looks like I think we've got through everything. And yeah, it seems like we're pretty satisfied with the answers we have, so, or the questions we have. So I think that's it. I thank you for everything, and thank you for joining me. I do want to emphasize to the audience here, please, please, please make donations. I don't care if it's $5 or $10. Go to the website, www.deafnincongress.com. Every little bit helps this campaign and pushes it further and further out so that we can get a hold of the constituents. I'll show you here an example of some of the things, marketing ideas that we've spent on. I just purchased magnetic calendars, as you can see here, that we're starting to give out. So donations have been used for this. Typically brochures people throw away. This you can put on your refrigerator as a calendar, but it's also a reminder of Chris Hallmark and the campaign and everything there. So when it comes time to vote, they have this guy that's been staring at it from the refrigerator, and maybe the picture will help. So please make a donation so that we can buy more and we can get postcards sent out as well to all the constituents. We have to do these things. We need people looking at our Facebook page, our website, to see how unique Chris Hallmark is. I need everybody in here to make history happen. I need all of America watching Kansas and giving this deaf person the ability to expose our entire language and our entire abilities to anything, to the entire nation. So your donations help tremendously. I just want to clarify, the money donated to you is basically your voice. The more you get, the bigger your voice. So that means if you want him, I need to give to him. If you don't have enough, you don't have a big voice and people aren't interested in you. So, you know, they say I don't want to bother supporting him or whatever, but you're asking people to donate. This donation in turn is the voice, because I want him to run as a Congress member. That's what I want for the U.S. House of Representatives. I want him, and I want him to represent us in every group here. So I am going to donate to him. And as the amount of donations builds, the visibility builds, and people see you and people know you. So people think of it as a monetary donation, and people, you know, they have family things or whatever, and they're like, oh, who's this guy? Yeah, I would vote for him. I'm in his district. You know, school teachers. Oh my gosh, I know this guy. I support him. You know, so it starts little by little spreading the word about you. The less visibility you have, the less people know about you. These donations are your key. They're your voice. And I want to talk about some accomplishments we've had so far. I announced in June of last year that I was running for Congress. In August, on the 6th, which was my birthday, I started my 365 days of vlogs. During that amount of time, I have noticed the Democratic Party, or during that time, the Democratic Party was not very supportive. It's a big struggle. But over time, we have two Democratic parties who've gotten on board and been very inclusive for everybody. Johnson County Democratic Party, as well as Johnson County Young Democrats as well, have been providing interpreters this whole time. And if I don't show up, they still have interpreters there. That's the influence that this campaign has had. That's an accomplishment. Some of the deaf people have asked me if I'm going to a specific political event because they need an interpreter. We've contacted them because they know who I am, and they're willing to provide interpreters. We've seen this change. This is the influence that I've had in some of the changes. That means that our campaign is making strides, and we're raising awareness for all of deaf people here. So winning the election, imagine what it can do across the country. The people are going to look at this Democratic Party and what he did by keeping a commitment and having equality for everybody and being inclusive, and that will start to change the perspective of here, that the people here. So I thank Johnson County Democratic Party as well as Johnson County Young Democrats for being willing to provide interpreters. We are in discussions with the Kansas Democratic Party right now that it's possible that we can set up something and have it ready for interpreters for any events, and providing language and access for communities, for the deaf community. So from June until now, yes, it's still a work in progress, but we're making big strides. And the reason is because I'm learning to be a fighter. Ever since I was a kid, I've always been a fighter, and I'm learning to fight. And I know that I need to have equal rights. And I want to give that to everyone, not just for deaf people, for disabled people, diversity groups, minority groups. I look forward to the fight. Yes, it's going to be harder in Congress. I understand that. But I just wanted to let you know that I do see one person. Hold on. Yes, the fight for your district and your community and everyone else. I believe in you. I think we're done. I did see one quick question about a black interpreter. Okay. Brian Exum had a question. If I could change the regulations for black interpreters and the colors of their shirts, that's not necessarily an issue for a federal level law. It's more of an interpreter ethic type of issue. The code of ethics, the CPCs, that type of thing. It's not really a Congress member's job to regulate the clothing. But in my office, with my interpreters, absolutely, they're going to follow a certain standard, and they're going to be able to fit with our team and our deaf members, so that works perfectly. But that's it. It's not a Congress issue. Okay. Yeah. Just between us, it is hard, but the feedback is good. I appreciate it. Yes, that's something that we need to work with interpreters, absolutely. Okay, I think we're good. Yep, we're pretty much done. I want to thank you again for joining our ASL Talk Show, and I enjoyed this discussion, and I want to keep working together with the deaf community while I'm still running for Congress, and hopefully until I win. I am volunteering to work for you for free. I will offer my support, my endorsement, and I will get whatever I can to support you. Thank you, and you have a good weekend. And before we close, I wanted to recognize the voice interpreter for us. It's Mitch Bartlett. So he's interpreting for us here. He's sitting right next to me. He's been the voice for everybody to be able to listen in to this conversation who don't understand ASL. So we wanted to thank him too. Awesome. Thank you so much, Mitch. And you guys have a good weekend. Take care. Bye-bye. Awesome. Hopefully you've enjoyed the show. We want to do more from here on out. We're going to be doing other kinds of guests as well, not just deaf guests. And we're going to look at how we can set up some of those. And we're willing to invite anybody from the local community, any local candidates, political leaders, that type of thing. We really want to sit down and have a conversation with them as well, and want you guys to be involved. So if you're really interested and you want to join us, let us know, contact us. At the same time, we're contacting people as well. So thank you for joining the show today, and don't forget to make your donations. Go to the website, www.deafencongress.com. Have a great day.